What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for coming back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Fast and the Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw. And yes, that is the full title. I will be just calling it Hobbs and Shaw for the rest of this review. So Hobbs and Shaw is the 9th film in the Fast and the Furious franchise and is the first spin-off in the franchise. And it stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Jason Statham as their returning characters, Hobbs and Shaw. Right out of the gate, I'll go ahead and say that I enjoyed this movie. I thought it was a good time. I thought there's some really good fun action, some, charismatic actors that really drive the film. As far as the story goes, I thought it was kind of predictable. If you've seen the trailers, I feel like you can pretty much guess where it's going to go throughout the entire time. And I think my biggest issue that I had with this film was that I didn't really feel a sense of stakes. So before I get too far into this review, I should just go ahead and say that I'm not a huge Fast and the Furious fan. I enjoy the films. I've seen them all multiple times. I have a good time with them, and it's nice to revisit these characters and explore this world a little bit more. But ever since the 5th film, which I do enjoy, and I've enjoyed a lot of the films that have come after, it's just gotten so over the top. It just feels like it's a franchise that really demands you to have a much higher suspension of disbelief than ever before. I just feel like with each and every installment, they're just getting so over the top with the action that I can't really feel a sense of stakes for the characters. And what I mean by that is that you have these characters that get in and out of situations like no problem, and you already know when they're gonna get into the next situation, they may get punched a few times, they may get knocked down, but they'll be fine. And I feel like this movie, for me, its biggest issue was I didn't really feel any sense of stakes watching it. It was entertaining. It was definitely enjoyable. It wasn't the worst in the franchise, and it wasn't the best in the franchise. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. It's hard not to like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Jason Statham. They're just two really charismatic action stars, and they drive this film. Their chemistry together and just the lack of chemistry of their characters is definitely the most entertaining element of this film. I definitely enjoyed the bromance of it. But yeah, what I could say overall is that I did like it. I think it's a good time. I think the majority of Fast and the Furious fans, or at least a lot of them, will at least enjoy it. However, I feel like there's going to be a bunch of people that feel just like me, that just feel like it kind of takes away from some of the stakes or just the believability from some of the previous films. In this movie, you see The Rock's character, and he's essentially the Hulk in this film. He's the Hulk without the coloring. He literally can do anything and everything. He's super strong. There's literally a part where he's jumping off the sides of buildings while there's guys rappelling down the sides of buildings. It's like literally like a skyscraper, and he's just jumping on them. He's punching them, and he jumped to the next one. He's literally jumping around off the side of the building like nothing, and then he lands and crashes the top of a car. And this isn't, I guess you could say this is spoilers, but it's really not, because majority of this film is action heavy like that, where he just gets into really intense situations, will land from like 30 stories, slam his back onto the back of a vehicle, and be completely fine. And I think that's where I struggled with this movie, is that I feel like it takes away from that any level of believability or stakes from the previous films, because the characters are just becoming superheroes in a lot of ways. Now, as far as superheroes go and comic book elements in general, in this film, based on the trailer, you've probably seen it, Idris Elba is literally Black Superman, as he says. He's essentially been modified, advanced, and he's essentially a super soldier in this film. He could do tons of different things. He's got a computer in his head, and I feel like, again, now we're introducing superpowers into the Fast and the Furious franchise. A franchise that for a majority of its early films was just a grounded, street level, street racing film. And that's something I really enjoyed about those films. Sure, they were heightened, as most movies tend to be, but, for the most part, it felt grounded. It felt like, that it was about the racing, and there may have been some fighting and some action within it. But yeah, ever since the 5th film, every single installment after that has just gotten so heightened and so intense with the action that they really just ask you to suspend your disbelief more and more and more each time. And I just feel like, listen, I love fantasy, I love sci-fi, so I love this kind of stuff, right? But to see a franchise like this just escalate this quickly and this rapidly with each and every installment, as far as the believability, again, it just takes away from some of the sense of stakes for me, and the real care if whether or not these characters are going to get through this situation. At the end of the day, this film went almost exactly like I thought it was going to, based on the trailers. And as I was watching it and kind of just getting the feel for how these characters were going to be and how the story was going to be played out, I already knew where it was going to go. I knew where the character relationships were going to go, and it played out exactly how I expected it to in my head. My friend Carlos, who I saw it with, felt the exact same way. The movie ended, and we had plenty of positives as far as the charisma of the actors, the action, the overall visuals of the movie, though there are a few times where the green screen is very apparent. But, and I think that's kind of where I struggle when it comes to really criticizing this film, is because this film 110% knows what it's trying to be. It's not trying to be super grounded. It's not trying to be Shakespeare as far as any sort of really exciting and really in-depth story. The performances are fun, they're enjoyable. There's some fun cameo performances from some comedians that you'll have a good time seeing, even though they're kind of just doing their shtick that you've seen them do in a bunch of movies. And again, I think my biggest thing is that it didn't really feel like a Fast and the Furious movie. It felt like they could have called this movie whatever and just had these two actors playing similar roles, and it would have been a fun, entertaining film. But this film literally felt like I was watching Transformers or G.I. Joe, and it didn't feel like Fast and the Furious. And of course, it's supposed to be a spin-off, it's supposed to be its own thing. However, it does tie into the Fast and the Furious franchise. It makes you think, all right, well, this is going to affect the Fast and the Furious franchise to some extent. We will most likely see these characters again in the Fast and Furious franchise, the main franchise itself. And so again, it just takes away from some of that level of stakes, and it makes me feel now more than ever that we will finally see the Fast and the Furious franchise go to space in a future film. That used to be a joke that you would see people make online because the films were just getting so heightened and so over the top. But I truly believe that we will get them to space now in one of these future sequels. All in all, guys, I think this is a fun movie. I think it's an enjoyable movie. It's really hard to dislike a movie with Jason Statham and Dwayne Johnson. They're just too likable. They're too charismatic. They drive the film. They're great at action sequences. They're great with the choreography. And the film is not trying to be anything other than what it is. I think it does a good job of being a very heightened, over-the-top, almost Power Rangers, G.I. Joe style action movie. And I just think that, again, if you're looking at it with the lens like I am, as far as it being part of a bigger franchise, it just felt like as if we went to go see Rise of Skywalker, the new Star Wars film later this year, and the Jedi just started like flying around like Superman and shooting laser beams out of their eyes. And obviously that's hyperbole, that's just super exaggeration, but that's kind of how this film felt for me. There was times where the characters were literally doing things that were superhuman. There's a sequence at the end with a helicopter that is so over the top, and again, it's trying to be. So it's hard to really criticize it because it's ridiculous, but it's trying to be ridiculous. But again, when it's tied to such a big franchise that, has bigger and ridiculous elements, but this one just takes it to that next level again, it just feels like, man, they are really just asking you to suspend your disbelief altogether. And really, again, it's taken away from some of the stakes of the previous films. I feel like The Rock was literally the Hulk in this film, and Jason Statham could pretty much do anything that he wanted, anything that he said he wanted to do and that he could do. That level of cockiness that he had, he pretty much, showed everybody that he could do those things he was talking about. So that's kind of, where I felt on the film. I did enjoy the character relationships, even though they were predictable, and I had a good time with it. But, I think it's kind of middle of the road for me when I think of the whole franchise. I think there was a lot of really cool elements as far as the technology that's able to, be brought to screen for action and all that kind of stuff. But it just feels not like a Fast and the Furious movie. But anyway, that's my thoughts. Let me know down below what you guys thought of this movie. Have you seen it? Have you not seen it? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Let me know all of that down in the comments below, guys. Make sure you guys hit that like button if you enjoyed my review, and hit subscribe for more videos, and I will see all of you guys in the next video. Bye-bye!